Welcome back to Beacon in the Storm. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, we're talking about the fact that privilege, this concept of male privilege and how many benefits men get because they have male privilege and all this just belief in the idea of privilege is bunk. It's absolutely bunk. It's completely annoying. It is one of the most annoying things that I've ever had to experience and deal with is people coming to me and going, well, Brad, you're privileged. Okay, so why do I want to talk about this one today? I want to talk about it because I was looking online yesterday, and I'm always looking for topics to discuss for my show, right? And somebody came in and they were like, men need to understand that they're privileged because they don't have uteruses and therefore they don't have to experience periods and all of the pain and suffering and emotional turmoil that goes with it. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that women have bodies that are different from men. I know it's shocking to some people out there that there is a difference between men and women, or at the very least males and females. I mean, it depends on how you want to use your terminology nowadays, right? I can get in trouble for saying that there's a difference between men and women. So I'm just going to say there's a difference between males and females because, that's the scientific term for us and all. And I just could not believe the amount of support that this opinion was getting, that because women have periods, men are privileged, and therefore it's okay that women take all these various steps in order to promote themselves over men. And that was the argument that was being made. And dyed-in-the-wool feminists were coming in and going, yep, that's just how it is. Men just have it better. And because of that, like, what are you all on? Like, do y'all not understand that men have bodily things and bodily functions that we have that are kind of awkward and weird as well, right? Like, I personally know someone who has suffered from testicular torsion. Horrible, horrible condition. If you're not aware of what that is, basically one of the guys are hanging, they twist and it's not good. And like, it requires surgery. It's all kinds of bad. In fact, I think I know another person that I've from years ago who suffered from that. We wear our reproductive organs on the outside, which is why it's so darn funny when we get kicked there, right? Female privilege, look at that. They don't have to suffer that, right? I mean, they can still get kicked in their groins, and it's not so fun, I understand, but like, we can be seriously hospitalized because we get kicked there. We can require major surgery. And so, like, if we want to talk about bodies and why bodies are different, let's not use that weird word privilege, because that's not necessarily privilege. I would say it's maybe some advantages or disadvantages, right? I mean, that's not something I decided that I'm gonna be better about, right? No. And some people were making this argument, all right? And so, and the argument being that it's not necessarily a privilege because it's biological. It's nothing anybody could help. Like, we just either born with it or you're not born with it. We have differences in our bodies and we need to acknowledge it. And the privilege comes in the fact that men don't have to worry about or pay taxes for or purchase the products that go along with the periods, right? Okay, I'm full in agreement with that one. That might be considered privilege, but I don't necessarily think that you should pay taxes on it. We don't pay taxes on food because they're the necessities of life, and that's a necessity unless, I don't even want to imagine the scene if women did not use those products, all right? It would not be pleasant anywhere in society if women did not have those products. Therefore, they are a necessity, okay? Shouldn't be taxed for it. As for purchasing them, technically you don't have to. You don't have to. You can, how they used to do it, get a rag, right? You can go, here's one. I was driving on the road the other day, and our local radio station, classic rock station, was had their comedy at 3 or whatever it was, right? And so I'm driving on the road, and here's a comedian, and this comedian is a female comedian. She's talking about the period huts that civilizations used to have, and she's like, let's bring back the period huts, where women can just go and be left alone for a week and society doesn't have to deal with them. And she was making a joke about how the fact that she's crabby and she doesn't want to deal with anybody. Like, okay, So I like this idea of privilege, that somehow I am conferred a benefit by society by being a man. Okay, what benefit is it that I'm being conferred? That I'll try to remember a few of them. That somehow I'm believed more than women are. They're like, oh, who's doing the believing? Like, who is it that you think, if I go out into public and I'm interacting with someone and there's a woman standing next to me and we're both discussing something, that I'm more likely to be believed? Okay. Doesn't that like essentially depend on the situation I'm in? If I walk into a hair salon and I'm talking to the proprietor of the hair salon and there's a woman standing next to me and she's essentially making the same points, aren't they going to believe her more often? Like, just, woman solidarity, right? Isn't that how that goes? Okay, maybe in employment, they bring up the fact that there's the pay gap, but the pay gap is based on kind of wacky numbers. Like, I don't think there really ever has been a good study of the pay gap, and even if they do, we take an average of, or a median, it's not just always average, of the entire working population in order to get those numbers. And they kind of, like, honestly, they stack these numbers. I was just looking at a government white paper on it. This is from the Department of Labor, and they were comparing women versus men's salaries as managers. And they were taking everything from the CEO of the company all the way down to a shift supervisor and calling it a manager, and then taking the median of that of men versus women. And well, it turns out there's more men managers than women, and there was another study or survey that showed that less women are interested in higher management positions overall. And so therefore it's not necessarily surprising that men, my microphone, that men are more likely to be in a management position, at least higher up in the company, and therefore their average pay is higher compared to women who tend to go for lower positions. And then there's arguments. I'm not completely oblivious to all this stuff. Okay, what I'm angry and upset about is the fact that we're trying to say that there's a societal issue of privilege when this is one-on-one. This isn't. There's no some grand conspiracy to keep men in power. This is individuals dealing with people through their life make determinations about what some people might be like, and because of that, and those are called prejudices, but because of that, they go and they make decisions based on these prejudices one way or another, and it happens to everybody. Everybody is prejudiced against. All right? I don't talk about race. I really don't want to talk about race. At least once a day, someone calls me out and how lucky I am to be white, and white this, white that, and like, can we keep it on topic? But no, like, I get put down because of my race. People are prejudiced against white people, and I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about men, because people are prejudiced against men. And guess what? People are prejudiced against women too. But it's not this grand societal mission to put women down. If it was, 58% of all degree earners would not be women. All right? The average starting salary for women coming out of college would not be higher than men. Right? Like, why? What? Like, there's so much misunderstanding about the statistics. A lot of people, I had somebody try to call me out on this the other day. I put out a video, and I used statistics from the United States because I live in the United States. It's not like I can necessarily influence policy in Uganda, right? I mean, I'm here in the United States. I'm talking to people in the United States. I'm talking to politicians and business owners and faith leaders here in the States. So that's where I understand my sphere of influence to really be. And I was giving statistics from the United States. And this person took a clip that I posted on TikTok, and they did a whole deal about it. And they were showing statistics from the United Kingdom and from France and from Germany and Japan and all these statistics worldwide to prove that I was wrong in my understanding of the relationship between men and women here in the United States. But all those statistics were from other countries. And like, this is moving the goalpost, right? Like, if I say something here, oh, well, women worldwide have it that bad. Like, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about here. I cannot change what goes on in Saudi Arabia. And I'm not necessarily going to go picket over in Saudi Arabia. right? I'm not going to discuss that country. I can influence the United States because this is where I live. I'm a citizen here. I have a voice here. I can influence politicians here. I can influence businesses here just by virtue of being a citizen, right? I can try. Out there, they don't care. They don't care about me. So like, let's keep it home, boys. All right, and ladies, whatever. All right, like the difference between men's bodies and women's bodies. Like, men are generally physically stronger. Generally, not always. Plenty of women out there much stronger than I am. All right? Women tend to be more, and there's science behind this. I'm not just making this up. Like, tend to be more, I don't want to say emotional. It's more caring. They're more communal. This is the better word for it. They're more communal. All right? Tend to be. There's plenty of guys more communal than plenty of women, all right? We have these ranges. Not every man and every woman is the stereotype that we have for them. And so it's not biological that gives any one gender a privilege, if that concept even exists. It's societal. And we have to look at society as it is today to determine these privileges, if they exist. Because too many people will pull the, well, for thousands of years card when talking about women. Women have been subjugated for thousands of years. They were property for thousands of years. They didn't own bank accounts until the 60s and 70s. Okay, I wasn't even born then. All right, the millennial generation wasn't even born then. They have not known a world where that was the case. So, okay, like, how about look at today? Let's look at what's going on today in the lives of men and women and determine whether or not they are subject to these so-called privileges, okay? And instead of just going, women have it worse, women are the victims, and men are so privileged, why not look at both sides? Because, I had an interview the other day, and her episode comes out like weeks from now. But she's a journalist, and she has been covering men's issues for about 30 years. And in that time, she has noted incredible disparity between the treatment of men and women, showing men as the victims. All right? So this journalist, who's been investigating this for 3 decades, has seen that men have it rough in many respects, but not all of them. And she and I had a great conversation about the fact that both she and I consider ourselves feminists. I believe in equality. I believe in equality of the sexes. But that's not necessarily what feminism is working on today. Instead, they talk about it as it's equality with a focus. Okay? Equality with a focus. They are focusing on women's equality, and most feminists that I have encountered believe that men should be doing the work in order to talk about and work on men's equality. Okay, that would be fantastic if people who weren't talking about men's equality and trying to point out the hypocrisy of pointing the finger at men point several fingers back at women doing that, right? That you get called misogynist for it. And so, how do we have a nice, civil, polite conversation about these issues that we can then go and talk to our politicians about and say, hey, there's plenty of businesses doing these illegal things to both men and women. We think the laws need to be enforced or new laws need to be written. I'm just a bill. Pass new laws, right? And before you go saying, well, that's not how it works anymore, Brad, if you have so little faith in your government, why are you even in this country? You don't believe that this government and the processes and due process of law can work for you. Why are you still here? Like, that's such a defeatist way of looking at things. I don't believe in any of that, all right? I believe in the ideals and principles of the American experiment, and that means having to go to your politicians and not just like writing a letter and go, oh, well, nothing got done, man, they hate women. That's not how that works, all right? There's plenty of marches on behalf of women's and women's issues. The UN has something like 8 days, 6 days, don't quote me on it, obviously, dedicated to women's specific issues and not a single one dedicated to men's specific issues. All right? Men are more likely to die from pretty much every single cause. They're more likely to have every single type of cancer. They live here in the States about 5 years less than women. And yet none of that is like, no big deal. Men need to figure it out themselves. Like, the thing is, like, the feminist movement had a huge amount of men supporters, and it had a huge amount of female dissenters or women dissenters. I don't want to accidentally get in trouble, because apparently that's a thing if you say men and females. But like nowadays, like, I'm trying to talk about the sexes of men and women, not necessarily the gender concept of men and women. And so it makes it even harder to talk about this topic, because I'm trying to talk about people who are born biologically with a certain condition that makes them what we would consider men, and people who are born biologically that makes them women, right? And somehow you're being uninclusive, or you're being prejudiced by not being super specific about how you're having this conversation, which makes it even harder. And so, like, what am I privileged for? Like, what exactly was it that I got that other people didn't get? Or in this case, women. What was it that women didn't get? Like, I have had to fight the whole way through my life to get anything that I wanted, to graduate from schools, to get the jobs that I wanted. Like, I've been told flat out that there was no room in the Democratic Party for white men. They straight up told me I shouldn't run for office because I was a man. Okay. I have not been able to apply for countless grants and scholarships. There's almost none for men, right? They're mostly for women, and women in this, women in that. Okay. So none for men. All the businesses that I worked at were almost entirely women. My first job out of law school was all women. My second job out of law school was all women, and I was the only guy. And so I got to experience women when they don't think men are listening, and they are just as raunchy. They're just as dirty. They will molest just as much. I got touched and pinched and called cute and all kinds of things as well. And so how am I any more privileged than the average woman, or more privileged than the average woman? It's this idea is bunk, because it assumes that everything is the same for everybody. Your specific situation may be different from other people, and because of that, you might have had advantages or disadvantages other people didn't do. But no one said that life was fair. And life isn't supposed to be fair, because if it was fair, then it would be a socialist, communist hellscape. It just wouldn't be good. It just would not be good. All right. If you are not familiar with what's the name of it? I think it was Rat Utopia, the Rat Utopia experiment. You need to check it out, because things did not work out so well for those rats. All right. So what is it that I'm supposedly privileged with that the average woman does not have? All right. Because if we're looking at the average high school student, the average female high school student is more likely to graduate from high school than the average male student. The average female college student is more likely to get a college age individual, college age individual is more likely to get a degree as opposed to the average college age male. The average female coming out of college is more likely to get higher paid salary than the average male individual. The average female is less likely to be imprisoned for the same crime as a male will commit, less likely to be convicted on it, and so on and so forth. There's lots of statistics that show how women are privileged. And the conversation about privilege always has to circle back around to men have the privilege. Otherwise, like, it just devolves into name calling. I've not seen a conversation. And when I have these conversations with both men and women who have studied this, okay, professors and journalists and therapists and psychotherapists and so on, all right, and politicians who are involved in this, and business leaders who are helping one way or another on these topics, it always comes back to the fact that men have to be seen as the enemy. If men are not seen as the enemy, this whole idea falls apart, all right? And the liberal concept of the gender war falls apart if men are not the enemy. But men aren't the enemy. In most respects, men are on the side of women seeking equality because men want equality too. But we're not allowed, for some reason or another, to join together. And don't get me started on this patriarchy BS, because that's just not how it is. 90% of consumer spending is done by women in the United States. Like 90%. How is that possible? Like, think about that. There has to be single guys out there who have women buying stuff for them all day long, all week long, all month long, because how else do you get 90%? So I want to end it there, because I'm like, it just annoys me. It annoys me that I get called out. Oh, well, that's your privilege showing, Brad. Like, which privilege? What privilege do I have that you don't have something that's equivalent in some degree? We all technically have privilege, right? We all are in some way benefited by something in society, but we all also have advantages and disadvantages, and you can't, we're like, I'm not allowed to call women out on theirs, because if I do, it's called misogyny. How dare you put women down? But it's having a conversation in an intellectually honest manner that allows us to work together to come to a common solution that benefits everybody. And that is what I'm looking to do. I don't want to put women down. When I started this content, when I started this brand, specifically, it is written on my whiteboard. I think it still is written on my whiteboard out there. Do not put women down, because I don't want to. I have no interest in putting women down. Women are capable. Women can do anything that a man can do. All right? I believe that. There are plenty of women out there who can do pretty much anything that a man can do. And now there are some biological differences between us. I, being biologically male, am not able to carry a child to term inside of myself, at least as far as science is aware at this moment, right? But a woman can. So is she privileged to be able to create life? Or is this just something that we need to get over? All right, everybody. Keep looking for the light in the tempest. God will show you the way.